Are we all set, Joe? Awesome. Thank you for joining the Sewer Commissioners meeting tonight on February 10th. This meeting is broadcast live on our local cable access channel. So if you do speak in the back of the room, the microphones may pick up your voices, just to let you know. This is being broadcast on Zoom as well, so if there are people watching it and they have a question, please put your question into the Q&A. Make sure that you give us your name and your address for our minutes, and Sean will keep an eye on that and let me know if there's questions. We have a pretty quick agenda for this, and I just want to ask the select board members to, and the sewer commissioners and water commissioners to introduce themselves to ensure that we have a quorum.
Jamie Stebbins.
Jennifer Stacy.
Mark Lamb.
I'm Dottie Fulgenetti,
I'm Craig Barger.
and we have Connor Reed, the town administrator, Sean Dugan, the assistant town administrator, and Elizabeth Hegg, our executive assistant. So the first thing that we have on the agenda tonight is 690 Depot Street. These votes are for two separate items, and it's discussion and vote, assessment of sewer privilege fees. So Connor, if you could just give us a little background on what the privilege fees mean, and then we'll go into the specifics of these two.
Sure, thank you, Dottie. So up until about 10 years ago, Easton actually had no public wastewater treatment capacity. We have, over the past decade, built a few different sewer districts in town, in North Easton on 138, and in this case, the Five Corners. And when the board was putting the financing together for those projects, it took advantage of a provision of state law where you assess what are called betterments to a property, so that the individual property that now has access to that improved sewer infrastructure pays their proportional share of the capital cost, unlike other municipal projects that may be more universal in their benefit. Having access to sewer when once you did not has a very discrete specific benefit to private property, and so you allocate those costs out that way. One of the motivators of building sewer outside of environmental protection is for economic development and creating infill and redevelopment capacity. And in order to build a sewer district that has excess capacity so that existing businesses can develop denser, or a new property owner can develop something new, you need to have some capacity set aside. And when that capacity is taken advantage of or purchased, for lack of a better word, the town, through its adopted regulations, assesses what are called a privilege fee. And the goal there is basically just equity, so that the folks who were there when the district got built and paid their proportional share aren't future funding others to join and not pay a portion of that capital cost. And so under your regulations that you've had for some time now, you use the standard of whatever the most recent sewer project, whatever one betterment cost, in this case $19,837. We do an engineering analysis of a proposed use. That comes through the Deputy Director of Public Works, Greg Swan, to the board. You have that in your packet. He's here tonight to explain any pieces of it. If you have questions, where on a case-by-case basis, as owners within these districts do engage in some new development, they go through permitting. We look at their water flow data and other things to make sure that we're assessing them fairly and appropriately, using the same methodologies that we use for the folks in those districts who paid betterments. And so that's what that is tonight. Ultimately, that does have to come back before you as a sewer commission to vote to assess those privilege fees that, again, are done on a case-by-case basis. In front of you, you have a proposed Chipotle restaurant at 690 Depot Street. There's information about that in the packet. I believe we have representatives. I don't know who, okay, there we go. From the business tonight, there are questions, and again, Deputy Director Swan can answer in any detail that I didn't cover.
Okay, so the way that we'll do this first is that the board will ask our questions, the deputy director will answer us, and then we can open it up to the public if they have any questions or if you'd like to make any comments. This is at Five Corners in the Shaw's Plaza, and based on the assessment, the proposed flow rate would be approximately 900 gallons a day. One sewer betterment unit rate for the construction of the Five Corners Sewer District was 220 gallons a day. Based on that calculation, this property would require 4.1 SBUs. The cost of one SBU for the construction of the Five Corners Sewer District was $19,837. So that would be multiplied by the 4.1 to come up with an $81,331.70 privilege fee. So do you have anything else more to add to that, or does that sum it up?
This is very straightforward, very cut and dry. Sam was very, been working together probably for the past year to get this project off the ground. This is just the last part. His letter that you'll find in his packet estimates that they will use about 900 gallons a day, which gets us to our privilege fee of $81,331.70. That's all I really have. It's the plans have been excellent that we've been working with. They'd like to break ground as soon as possible. They've gone through planning board, which is why we're here. This is the last step for them to be able to purchase capacity, but we have every confidence that this should be a great.
Awesome. We'll start with you, Jamie. Do you have any comments or questions?
I agree. I had reviewed it in advance, and it's pretty straightforward, so no questions.
Jen?
I also have no questions. You've been through this before, so pretty standard, well explained. Thank you.
Mark is also chair of the Economic Development Council, so not that we all don't care a lot, but Mark has a special focus on economic incentive and development down in that area.
Thanks for teeing that up. No, this is very exciting. I'm very pleased that you guys are participating to our economy at Five Corners. As far as questions go, I have no questions. It seems straight math.
Craig?
I don't have any questions either.
And this is part of the diff?
I'm fairly certain it is. I'm not certain if the Shaw's parcel was in there. I can pull it up online if you all want to watch me awkwardly do that.
I should have known that beforehand. I try not to ask questions that you have to look up at the meeting. So I think that this is great. That is the reason that we invested in the sewer down that area, was to invest and to bring on new businesses. So I want to say thank you to you for choosing Easton to bring your Chipotle restaurant. I think we have a lot of great restaurants in Easton, and being able to tie into the sewer district is really what makes these things happen. The people in our community are always asking us to bring in new businesses because they pay more taxes, especially meals tax, and it at some point should really help the residential tax burden in the community.
It looks like it is, but that's a very grainy map. That's Shaw's.
Yep.
So I think we're good.
Yep. So that we created a district improvement financing area down there, and that was also an incentive to be able to draw some of the tax revenue to put into further investment in that sewer line and to the community as well. So it's all working exactly according to plan. With that, did you have anything that you wanted to add, or?
No, nothing further.
All right. And when are you going to be opening, do you think?
I think they're planning to open by Q4 this year.
That's great. Excellent. All right. Craig, would you like to make a motion?
Sure. So I move that we recommend the proposed Chipotle restaurant at 690 Depot Street be assessed a privilege fee equivalent to 4.1 SBUs for $81,331.70.
Second.
That's Barger and Lamb. All in favor? Unanimous. Great. Congratulations, and thank you for choosing Easton. The next one is 612 Washington Street. It's a commercial property. Godfrey Auto is proposing to expand their current business, Godfrey Automotive, with a brand-new auto service facility at the same location. This property was part of the original assessment of the Queesit Commercial District Sanitary Sewer Collection System and was assessed a betterment of 1.5 SBUs for 330 gallons per day. The existing repair shop has a footprint of 2,520 square feet. It's comprised of office space and 3 rental bays.
Repair bay.
Repair bays, I'm sorry. The proposed facility will be 5,040 square feet, which will include reconstructed office space and 5 repair bays to better serve their customers. Based on the attached water consumption report, Godfrey currently uses approximately 50 gallons of water per day for 2,520 square foot facility. As the proposed facility is being doubled in size, it could be expected that the new water consumption rate could possibly reach up to 100 gallons of water per day. The proposed 100 gallons per day would still be within the allotted sewer system capacity that they've already claimed. So this recommendation is that not to assess an additional privilege fee based on the amount of water that is expected to be used. Anything else that I miss?
No, I think this is somewhat unusual, but I think for the record, and I believe the business here, we wanted to memorialize the practice that there are times where the existing assessment, which is based usually on design flow, is still sufficient compared to the planned expansion, and so there's no need, it wouldn't be appropriate to add a cost there. So I suppose you could take a motion to not do it, but we're not recommending that you assess a privilege fee here.
Okay. Do you want us to take a vote to not assess it at this time?
Greg, this was your
If I may,
request.
I brought this attention to the sewer commissioner.
Greg, could you set that at the table just so ECAT can pick up the feed?
I brought this to the attention of the sewer commissioners tonight because I have a feeling that we will be seeing a lot more of these circumstances where properties, existing properties that have already been bettered will want to redevelop or have a change of use. And at some point, the sewer commissioners have to make a decision whether to have them purchase additional privilege fees or not. This is a fairly large project. It's gone through site plan review. They're doubling the size. It's only fair to all the communities and all the businesses in town that they come before the board tonight and have their case heard.
Yeah.
I don't, they've already purchased the appropriate amount of capacity. I would recommend they don't see any further privilege fees, but I'm just the deputy director of public works. It's up to the sewer commissioners to either charge them an additional privilege fee or to, state that they have the appropriate amount of sewer capacity already as part of their original assessment.
Well, the whole idea of the privilege fee is that you've got an organization that's going to be using extra capacity. So this does not look like it's going to be using extra capacity. It might not even reach the initial capacity that they already did. However, if something were to change and they were using beyond the capacity for this, would we go back and revisit that, or?
We would only be able to, well, they would have to, if for whatever reason they started using 400 or 500 gallons a day, they would be paying for that. They would be paying that in sewer fees.
Okay.
And that would be something, we couldn't go back but I don't believe they will ever get to that based on the existing water consumption rate.
Right.
These are pretty standard, based on the model that they have. They're using about 50 gallons a day. I don't foresee them unless they put in a coffee shop or.
But that would be a change of use.
It would be a change of use, and we'd be
Any change of use
right
would
back
trigger
here.
another site plan review. and
Correct.
everything
Or
back
if
again.
sometimes if it just comes through they're trying to pull a building permit, we would get alerted to that, and then that would necessitate us maybe coming back here.
I just want to talk through this because if people are watching at home, I want them to see how we're thinking of this and why we're thinking of it this way, especially since some of this is still pretty new. But I agree with your assessment that it doesn't look like there's a need for this at this time. Any other comments or questions from anyone on the board? Jamie?
I'm just going to say if the coffee shop does go in, then it's a great place to wait and for your car to be repaired. But no, I agree, pretty straightforward in terms of usage. And I guess the only thing I would say is, so we base one unit on, one privileged unit is 2,000 square feet?
No, sorry, it's
No.
typically on design flow of water. I mean,
Okay,
each
so it has nothing
district.
to do with, there isn't a linear relationship between the increase in square feet.
No, and you'll often see, and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but particularly for automotive-related businesses, show floors, things like that, you have a lot of square footage that's not consuming a huge amount of water and therefore not using a lot of sewer. And so those business types have historically had a lower assessment than a 5,000. I mean, if you look, I think the immediate one right before this is actually half the size, but it's a restaurant, so it uses way more infrastructure, right? So it's based on not just the size, but what they're doing with that size.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
I have no questions. I just appreciate the due diligence and the process around it all, and I think it is a good best practice to do this way. So thank you.
You're welcome.
No questions. It seems fair, equitable.
I'm just excited that you're expanding. We've been customers of this family for a long time, and I'm very excited that you guys are doing this. And I thought you were going to retire earlier, but you decided. They took over. Good for them. Good for them. Well, thanks, and again, thanks for doing business in town. Appreciate it.
I echo that, and I think it's great to see a business that's been here for such a long time expand and grow and employ, keep people employed and be a good community partner. So I think my family has used you as well, and I've heard a lot of great things about you. You're awesome. All right, Craig, you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I just recommend that there be no additional privilege fee given to Godfrey Automotive.
Second.
Were you going to say that you didn't think we were going to vote on it?
Oh,
You hesitated.
No,
but-
no.
Okay. All right. I think just because it came under the heading here of discussion and vote, and it was both under there, it's worth taking a vote on this. So,
fine.
So that's Bodger and Lamb. All in favor? Unanimous. Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you and good luck.
Thank you, guys.
And the last item that we have on the agenda is the acceptance of minutes from July 15th, 2024, the last time we met.
So moved, Barger.
Second.
Bodger and Lamb, all in favor? Unanimous. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Lamb, Bodger and Lamb, all in favor? Unanimous. Terrific.
Hey, Sam, how's the house? Is it good?
All right, we are going to switch over to the Select Board meeting. So, starting this again, I will welcome everyone to the February 10th Select Board meeting. This meeting is, again, continued broadcast live on local cable access. It is a Zoom meeting, so if people are watching now and they have a question, please put your question in the Q&A feature, and Sean will monitor those and let us know there's a question. We would ask for your name and address for our minutes. And with that, we're going to take a pledge of allegiance if people would like to join us. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. So the first thing that we have on this agenda is a timed public hearing at 6:10. Craig, if you'd like to read the public hearing notice.
Sure. The Easton Select Board, as licensing authorities, will hold a public hearing in the Colleen A. Corona Boardroom, 136 Elm Street, Easton, Mass. On Monday, February 10, 2025 at 6:10 p.m. to consider and act upon an application for the transfer of a Class II license from O'Brien Car Care, doing business as O'Brien Auto Sales, 95 Eastman Street, Easton, Mass., to Wheaties Incorporated, doing business as Shoveltown Auto Service, 95 Eastman Street, Easton, Mass., to engage in the principal business of buying or selling second-hand motor vehicles or parts thereof pursuant to the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 140. Those who cannot attend and wish to submit written testimony for the record may do so by sending an email with the subject "Public Hearing, Shoveltown's Auto Service" to ehag@easton.ma.us.
Okay. So Patrick Weedman of Wheaties is here? That's me. Come on up. So just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're planning to do.
My name is Patrick Weedman. I've been in the automotive industry since I was probably 14. Since 1998, I've owned and operated 2 repair shops over in Franklin, Mass. And we are purchasing O'Brien Car Care, the property, and the customer list, and we're going to be starting operation there hopefully February 25th. I think we're closing.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So we're hoping to bring what we do in Franklin to Easton. We're very involved in the community over there, the food bank and all the, a lot of the Little League teams, and there's a couple other foundations that we are very fond of over there, and hopefully we have that kind of footprint here as well. That's our plan.
Well, that's terrific. We have a very robust local Chamber of Commerce, the Easton Chamber of Commerce, and then we're also part of the Metro South Chamber of Commerce.
Excellent.
So you may find some good contacts in those groups, and after you get settled in, I'm sure they would be happy to meet you and
that's great.
do a
Thank you.
ribbon cutting and the whole shebang to
Awesome.
have people know that you're in Easton now.
Thank you. I appreciate that, yeah.
That's great. Any comments or questions?
Yeah,
Jamie?
Dottie, I'll just say as a member of the Easton Youth Baseball League,
It's already hitting me up.
All right.
That's all right.
Now this is even better. Franklin is one of our arch rivals, and I'll just say,
yeah.
if you can pick up any signs that the third base coach is throwing down, I'd be interested. So, but thanks
I'm
for
there
doing
for
business. Thanks for coming to Easton.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Well, I hope that thank you for using Easton.
Yep.
Same, thank you.
Craig?
Just a question, you're both doing service and sales? Is that what you're doing at the property?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Nope, that's the only question I had.
Okay, so this is, says that you're going to have a maximum of 34 vehicles on display, contingent on successful closing of the business transaction and filing of all the necessary fees and paperwork, including a $25,000 surety bond as required by state law. Okay, so Craig, do you want to make a
Yeah,
motion?
sure, I move to approve the transfer of the auto dealer Class 2 license from O'Brien Car Care, doing business as O'Brien Auto Sales, 95 Eastman Street, Easton, Mass., to Wheaties Incorporated, doing business as Shoveltown Auto Service, 95 Easton Street, Easton, Mass.
Second.
That's Bodger and Lamb, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, congratulations, and
Thank you,
thank you for
everybody.
choosing
Looking forward
Easton.
To making our footprint here, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right, next we have the transfer of a common victualler license from Georgia Pizza Incorporated, doing business as Lindo's Pizza, 447 Turnpike Street, Easton, Mass., to Asan LLC, doing business as Lindo's Pizza, 447 Turnpike Street, Easton, Mass. Oh, that's you, come on up.
Welcome.
So you're Asan Riaz?
Yes, I am.
Did I say that right?
Yes.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing there.
Right now, we're gonna keep the same way, the way he have it. Right now, he have the old-fashioned restaurant. He don't have a delivery and Uber Eats stuff. So we're trying to work on that first. So after that, we need to fix it, the kitchen and everything. So right now, we're gonna keep the way is that. Yeah, and then it's very old place, and then I have very nice people. This is my first time in Easton. And then I see everybody is very nice, especially thank you to Sean. He explained me step by step. I'm from Pakistan. I never have business. This is my first time.
Oh, that's great.
Yep.
Well, we hear great things about Sean all the time, so I'm not surprised. He's a great help to new businesses.
Yeah.
And so Lindo's is a very well-loved pizza place, so I think it's great that you're going to be keeping it in the same format, and I'm sure you'll make it your own as well. But I think people really appreciated having
Yeah,
that
we
restaurant
keep the
here.
same recipe. We're still working with the guy who was the owner.
That's awesome.
And then also we add some more stuff to update the Lindo's Pizza. Also, I keep the name because he worked for this name like almost 45 years. So I don't want to drop down. So I keep the same name and same recipe also.
That's very thoughtful, and I'm sure him and his family appreciate that.
Yep.
Jamie?
I'm excited to have the legacy continue, because I live right around the corner from there. And how did you come upon Easton? How come here for your first business?
Like my family, like they've been here almost 65 years. So all my uncles, all my aunts, everybody here, but nobody wanna do business. So I really feel bad when every time they work. They have a lot of money, but they don't want a business, and they don't believe, and nobody support me. They say, you're not gonna make it, but I said I will do it, and then I'm trying my best. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I think you're going to do a fabulous job. You seem to bring a lot of passion here, and we're excited to support you as a community.
Yeah, even like I have younger brother, older brother, nobody wanna support, but that was my dream. I wanna be a businessman.
Yeah.
And, that was my passion to make everything, and then I'm struggling here almost 11 years, and now I got my place.
That's fantastic. I think you found a great community.
Yeah,
So welcome.
thank you so much.
Yeah, so congratulate you. It's going to be an amazing opportunity. Thank you for coming here in Easton. We're
Thank
happy
you.
to have you.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What you've achieved is pretty incredible. Your story and pushing through the difficulty and getting to this point.
Yep.
I mean, tonight we're about to give you your license to operate your new business.
Thank you.
And you couldn't have bought a better business with a better name and following and respect.
Yep.
So I think for your first business, you definitely purchased the right one.
Yep.
And like Jamie said, with your passion, you will be successful.
Thank you so much.
Craig?
Yeah, thanks for doing business in Easton. I really appreciate it.
So like I said to the last gentleman, you know, the local Easton Chamber of Commerce, they have a lot of resources there, especially if you connect with other businesses. As you get moving, you may need some other help with other areas. And, you know, creating a good network of support around you is really important. You know, I think that to jump in, you got to get your feet wet and get the feel of everything first, but keep them in mind at some point. And if you have questions about business-related things, reach out to us. You know, we've all worked in this area for a long time. We have a big network of people. We'd be happy to make connections if you needed, you know, if you needed a particular help with something, you know. We'll do our best to support you. And I love your story, and I'm really proud of you. This is a really exciting point for you and your family. So you'll do awesome.
Can I just have one thing?
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to share, if you look around Easton, all the businesses in Easton, the ones that are hands down the most successful, whether it's a restaurant owner or auto business or it doesn't matter, are the ones who are involved in the community.
Yep.
So the more you get involved in the community, the more successful your business will be, guaranteed.
Yep.
So that's my little tip.
Yep.
Great. All right. Craig, there's
So
a little disclaimer in here that
Yep.
says, do you want to read that into
No,
the
go ahead,
motion?
go ahead.
It just says the recommendation is to approve the transfer contingent on filing all the required paperwork and payment of fees. And if you have any questions on that, Sean will be able to guide you through it. And I do want to make a note in our packet. It says the new owners of Lindo's Pizza are not requesting a transfer of the restaurant, wine and malt and jukebox and electronic games licenses held by the previous owners at this time. So this is really just for the common victualer's license.
So I move to approve the transfer of the common victualler license from Georgia Pizza Incorporated, doing business as Lindo's Pizza at 447 Turnpike Street, Easton, Mass. To Asan LLC, doing business as Lindo's Pizza, 447 Turnpike Street, Easton, Massachusetts.
Second.
So that's Bodger and Lamb, all in favor? Unanimous. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much, sir.
Welcome.
Awesome. All right, that was it.
Sean,
you so
Sean
much.
will be in touch with the information for the license.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right. The next item on the agenda is a road closing request. The Children's Museum of Easton, the 29th Father's Day Road Race and Family Fun Walk on Sunday, June 15th, 2025.
Sure, thank you, Dottie. Attached in your packet is information from the Children's Museum. The Father's Day Road Race is a beloved race in town that I may or may not have run recently with a stroller. This is the 29th year running, no dad joke intended. The details are in a packet. It's a road closure in the downtown area. They'll have representatives from the museum placing cones. Staff will have safety vests. There will be 2 police details, and they'll also have the CERT team on site. Request has been circulated to Public Safety and DPW. I'd recommend the board approve a road closing request contingent upon coordination with police and fire department. Per the usual process, the applicant may apply for any necessary temporary sign permits through inspectional services.
Okay. Any comments, questions? Jamie? Are you running this year?
There's a really good chance
With the kids?
with the kids.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Jen?
No questions.
No, I was asking if you were running.
I'm running.
Dottie, you put us on the spot.
Mark?
I will not. I don't want to ruin it for everyone else, so I will not be running. But I also have no questions.
I will not be running either.
Neither will I, so thank you to whoever runs. Get your select board stickers for your shirt.
So,
All right, well, this is really great.
Yeah.
Another real exciting community event that everybody looks forward to each year. They changed the route, so it used to run down Elm Street, which I loved because I would be able to just stand on my front steps and see it, but it's always really exciting to see everybody that runs in this. So you You want to make a motion,
Sure.
Craig?
So I move to approve the road closing request from the Children's Museum for Easton's 29th Father's Day Road Race and Family Fun Walk on Sunday, June 15th, 2025, contingent upon the coordination with the police and fire departments, and the applicant must apply for any necessary temporary sign permits through the Inspectional Services Department.
Second.
So that's Bodger and Lamb, all in favor? Unanimous.
I might just go just to watch these two run.
Cheer them on. All right, item 4, the one-day liquor license for the Edgar Allan Poe Speakeasy at Full Color Events. We're going to table this for now. There's been a date change requested by the applicant, so we'll bring that back once they've decided on the date. So the next item, item 5, discussion and vote, Blanche A. Ames Elementary School, Break Builders, project change order number 16.
Now, Walter, not to put you on the spot as you walk up in front of the camera, I think, is this it to get to the closeout?
For PMA and for Brait, it is our last change order. We are not aware of any other change orders that have been requested by the town or the school.
That's good. Have you been asked that before
We
by other
certainly
towns who then gave you change orders?
So that is the last one that we would like to do. We're waiting for it. Hi.
Sorry, I
That's
didn't
okay.
mean to get that off kilter.
Yep.
No, that's okay.
So just if I could, Walter, for the board's reminder, it's been a minute since we've had one of these for Blanche Ames. Obviously, the school's been up and running for a while. This is actually a credit back to the town. So Craig, I don't know if you're going to continue the tradition and have Walter read
No,
the
it's all
log.
right.
But we need to do this to close out the project and get through
begin the
MSBA
closeout
audits,
process. Yep.
through the MSBA audit where they withhold that last 5% of a grant and fully move on. There's a full, no longer pending certificate of occupancy at the building. Obviously, it's been a wonderful facility for the community.
I can give you a little bit
Yeah,
further
sorry.
on where we're at on the budget as well,
Yes,
as we
please.
enter that project closeout. So for Blanche Ames, I know it was quite a bit ago, but the voters approved a $94.8 million total project budget. That included an estimated district share of about $58.8 million. What we are tracking right now for a total expenditure on the project is about $81.8 million. So that's about 13 million lower than estimated, about 13.7% lower. And where we are at on the estimated district share at completion is about 48.8 million versus the 58.8 district share anticipated. That's 10 million lower, and that represents about a 17% lower cost for the town of Easton. That is all subject to MSBA final audit. We do plan to begin that process pending a successful vote for the change order tomorrow by getting that paperwork for the final requisition with Brait routed. We do, as Connor mentioned, we have a full permanent certificate of occupancy. We are final completion. We have our lead certification, so we are ready to begin that process with the MSBA. Once we submit it with them, it is about 6 months to 12 months before they finally close out. So we're going to put that process together, get it running. I know we recently just had a project that submitted, Chad, a year and a half, maybe?
Yeah, a little over a year ago.
So it does take time, so we will get it in as quickly as we can. But just want to make everyone aware that is a paperwork process on their end to get that closed out. So happy to take any questions on Blanche Ames and where we're at on the project budget.
So it could be like up to another year before they release that final 5%?
Yep.
Jamie?
I'm just looking, but before I get there, anything that stood out to you on this change order number 16, anything that you guys question or anything?
No, we honestly, the last couple items were just very, very minor. We had already approved these PCOs. The largest piece in there, I think you'll see, is the credit for $85,000 for indoor play equipment. It was included in the project specifications and the drawings. The school just doesn't feel like they need them at this time, so they're happy to be able to take that credit. So
I
that's
see
really
that. So credit of 85,000.
that's the real big piece of that change
Okay.
order. Yep.
Okay.
Jen?
No questions. It's just really exciting to hear how much under budget it came, and the benefit that goes back to the town taxpayers of Easton.
Agreed.
Yeah, no questions, but those are some big percentages. Those are massive. I did not expect that a couple of years ago, so fantastic.
I'm just going to echo what they said. Thanks for coming, Walter. Good to see you.
I'm here for the next item too, so.
Well, I'm going to add to that because, I think it's important to remind people, we kind of forget some of the details as we go through these because we're doing good things all the time. During the time of this project was during COVID and when there was major supply chain disruption and other schools that we just were a step ahead of a lot of these things that happen. Other schools ended up having to have huge escalation costs because of shortage of materials and things like that. So I remember being on that committee, and the way that you guys were advising was to make decisions, as early as we could with, great information that we had. But because everything was working so seamlessly at that point in the project, that's where a lot of the savings came from. So you really did give great advice through this project about how to move forward with things.
And if I could just add to that, Dottie, because it ties into this and the next item. In 2019, when this was going to a vote, which itself followed years of building assessments, community planning, public meetings, getting invited in 2017 into the MSBA grant program, there was understandably a lot of pause with folks as this was the largest capital project the town had ever embarked on. And there was sticker shock with the nearly $100 million budget. And I really can't emphasize enough that much as that conversation, voters were generous enough to trust us to move forward, as they did again in 2023 with police, fire, and public works. One of the most important takeaways, having done a lot of these projects, whether it's sewers or this, is that shelving it and waiting would not have saved money. It would have cost money, right? And in this case, so we're now looking at something that's, Walter, you said 10 million lower on our local share, a 17% variance. You don't want so much contingency that you risk people being uncomfortable approving it. A lot of that wasn't contingency. A lot of that was bid savings. The GC did a great job. Our OPMs did a great job. The designers did a great job. Public Works, everyone working on this did a lot of work. But had we waited in 2019, we could have been in the same boat as a lot of communities that you referenced who needed, I believe, emergency financial relief from the state because the cost overruns were getting so out of control. So we are very fortunate that we moved when we could, and that this got delivered on time and 10 million under budget, because that directly, with a debt exclusion like this or a debt exclusion like the police, fire, public works, that directly translates to a lower tax impact than what we forecast. And we know that tax impact for this is substantially lower than what we forecast. And so that doesn't change that the cost of living is very high. It doesn't change that our operating budget has real challenges, but these were capital projects that were absolutely necessary at the time voters trusted us to do them, and I'm really happy to see them coming in so it's not even accurate to say so tight on their budget, meaningfully under their budget, that will cost people less.
Yep. Excellent.
Dottie, because we're going into this in a moment, several of us were on the school planning committee, including yourself, and the trust and the rapport that Walter, Chad, and the team built to lead us now into this next project, which I'm excited to talk about tonight, is amazing, right? Because that's what allows me to, as I'm scrolling through here, ask Walter in advance, right? Because that trust is there, and you've shown it time and time again that you're not only looking out, in the best interest of all Easton residents, but this board as your oversight committee. So thank you very much for the continued professionalism.
Thank you.
And I think that trust also means that we feel confident to be able to ask the questions that we want to ask and that they're going to be well-received, even if they're tougher questions, So I saw that on the school planning committee, and no question was off the table. And everybody involved, I think, including one of the neighbors who was at every single meeting, felt that they were heard and they had the level of comfort to ask whatever they wanted, so.
And come to the site.
Right, and come to the site. All right, Craig.
So I move to approve the Blanche A. Ames Elementary School Brait Builders Corporation project change order number 16, the credit to the town of $35,953.40.
Second.
That's Bodger and Lamb. All in favor? Unanimous. You should have a wall in your office that shows all of the schools that came in under budget.
And all the nice things that people say about you all.
We have the under budget one. We have that one. We have that one built. We like that one.
All right, the next item that we have is a discussion and vote on the contract for the construction of the Easton Public Safety, Public Works, and Fire.
Sure. I believe we have a handful of folks here, including the chair of the Municipal Building Committee, to speak to this project if the board has questions about the detail. But I do want to, for the board and the public's benefit, if anyone's watching, kind of walk through the history here again. Again, with sensitivity towards the really tough operating budget year we have in front of us in the coming year. We arrived at the decision as a community to replace police, fire, and public works at a ballot referendum in 2023, but that followed work that began in earnest in 2014 with a project that was funded to comprehensively document the existing deficiencies and programmatic needs at all police, fire, town, and school buildings that the Municipal Building Committee led. That report laid the foundation that helped us get into the MSBA pipeline to bring us the very successful Blanche Ames Elementary School construction project. And as part of that, it also outlined the tens of millions of dollars of outstanding repair needs at our existing police, fire, public works facilities. It also documented that then was detailed far more in 2021-22 after voters approved funding for feasibility for assessing our police, fire, and public works. That documented that outside of necessary repairs of these facilities, which range between 50 and 70 plus years old, even if they were repaired to their mint condition, you would just have some really nice antiques. They're less than half the size of what you would need for modern police, fire, public works departments. And so all of that is a long way of saying that the timing here is not my favorite, frankly, and I'm sure not yours, because you will be repeatedly asked, if you have not yet been already, how can we have challenges with funding schools or town departments if we're doing a big construction project? So it's important that we're here now on this project, not because of a budget choice made this year, but reflecting 9 years of work. There's also a really important distinction that these are funded through debt exclusions, which those funds can only go towards a building project. So even if the board were to halt progress on this, it's not as if you could reallocate that revenue against operating challenges, right? It would just not be raised at all. And then if this was eventually taken off the shelf, you would probably then need another debt exclusion to get an authorization to spend a lot more money as escalation continues into the future. Again, I don't want to kind of preempt that and say, therefore, people shouldn't be concerned about timing. They should be. Those are fair questions, but we're here tonight following 9 years of work and really earnestly almost 4 years since voters approved of feasibility funding in 2021 to get us here. Now, just like with Blanche Ames, you start these projects, you have a total project budget, in this case $150 million. That includes contingency, it includes design, construction, administration, and one of those real big pressure points and tests for the project and for our team who's sitting here is how much did they dial in those designs to be only what is absolutely programmatically essential, which is a question we get a lot. Is there going to be bells and whistles on this thing? And we just saw the schools turning back $85,000 for equipment that they deemed they didn't need. Or is this just what's appropriate for the existing department and future-proofing it for a bit? Because these are not 5-year buildings, they're not 10-year buildings, they're 50-plus year facilities, which makes sense since it's been 70 years since the last time anyone built any of them. But a real pressure point is after you get through design development, permitting, which we've of course done, you do construction estimates, you put it out to bid. And so I'm really pleased for a change in the past 12 to 18 months to be able to share some good financial news, although I wrote these notes before thinking about the fact that Blanche James was right before it, so that was good news too. But the bids for the construction of these facilities came in, I think, 2 weeks ago-ish.
Yep, January, yeah, almost 2 weeks.
And last week, the Municipal Building Committee, the chair of which is here with us today, if the board would like to put him on the spot, unanimously voted to recommend that the board award the contract for the construction of these facilities to the low responsive and responsible bidder, which is Fontaine Brothers Construction. The project budget that was approved, there was the $150 million general appropriation, but within that, $116,740,000 was for construction, and this bid is 8% below that at $107,320. That represents a bid savings of $9,420,000. That doesn't include the existing contingency that's in the budget as well, so that gives a good amount of contingency and bid savings to work with as we go through this process over the next 18 plus months. Can't count eggs before they hatch, so we can't say mission accomplished. We haven't broken ground yet, but this is unabashedly good news. And again, I appreciate KBA, Weston and Sampson, our designers, and PMA. That when I think either the night of or the next morning after voters approved this, which was very narrowly approved, we reinforced and talked with PMA, and this has always been the page they were on, that we want to have an extremely tight focus on budget control for this project in particular. And again, can't declare mission accomplished, but having it come in millions under budget is good news. So PMA is here to talk about the contract. I think we're just finalizing a couple very minor insurance questions with council, but we could do a contingent vote to award tonight if the board's comfortable after asking any questions you have of PMA or KBA. I don't think we have slides.
Nope, no
right?
slides, just
But
was
if you
planning.
could just kind of give an overview
Yeah.
of timeline.
Absolutely. So regarding the bid and the recommendation to award and the bid process itself, the two bids were within 1% of each other. We did only receive two bids from general contractors, both excellent contractors. We had 5 submit pre-qualification packages, 4 were pre-qualified, and 2 bid. One was Brate Builders, who constructed the elementary school, and then the other is Fontaine Brothers, who PMA has worked with on multiple projects. We gave this information to the Municipal Building Committee, but we worked with them on 2 projects in Shrewsbury as a construction manager at risk. Shrewsbury, I think we've gone through this with the Municipal Building Committee, but there is a little bit of a premium to go construction manager at risk. Shrewsbury actually elects to take that construction premium so that they can have Fontaine as their contractor on all of their jobs. They've done the last 3 in Shrewsbury, ranging from 60 million, from 20 million to 75 million. So that's just a little bit on Fontaine. We did have great bidder interest on the filed sub bids. We had 115 packages, 113 pre-qualified, and I think we ended up with over 100 filed sub bid bids, of which the general contractors were able to craft their bids. So happy to see all that. The recommendation from the Municipal Building Committee was to include alternates 1 through 3. Speaking to what Connor had mentioned, only having the bare necessities in these buildings and not the bells and whistles. These departments were actually willing, in order to make sure that this project comes in on budget, the departments were willing to make sacrifices as alternates to ensure that. So these are canopies for DPW to house equipment outside to make sure that they're out of the weather. A big piece of this is to make sure that these pieces of equipment, these $1 million piece of equipment, last longer. So having that canopy is going to be huge. And then the other piece of it is that the police canopies at public safety, all the fire equipment stored inside, but being able to roll in the canopies for the police cruisers means that these vehicles are going to be undercover and not have to be cleaned off when they're going out or getting out on a shift change or anything like that. So now all three facilities, all three departments are going to be able to have equipment, vehicles stored in covered areas. So that, as Connor mentioned, that bid and the recommendation included the alternates as well. Timeline-wise, what we would plan on doing, or what we're planning on, pending a successful authorization and recommendation vote tonight, would be to get them a notice to proceed and the contract package as quickly as possible. We're hopeful of an early March groundbreaking, boots on the ground. I believe we have about a 16-month, I don't have the schedule up, sorry.
So,
May 18th, the first one, December 22nd, first, the second one, assuming tomorrow's the start date.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Fire substation.
When you say did you say May 18th? 18th next year.
Yep.
Yeah. No, it's hyper specific. That's all.
We've lived in it for the last 2 months. It's nailed in Chad's head on the schedule.
So late May next year
Fire
for
substation.
fire substation, and November. That's what you said. December for the rest of the buildings.
For public safety and DPW,
so
correct.
those would be substantial completion dates. So as you've seen with the schools,
Right.
you would expect occupancy a month or two later.
Sure.
Unlike the schools, public safety and DPW do not have a hard date that they have to move in. So
Yes.
there's a little bit more
That would be
flexibility
great.
there for the departments to organize their move, get ready to go, make sure everything's in place and working before they move in, since they're critical operations facilities. They have a little bit more of a buffer there. Schools, you start on the first day of school, it doesn't really matter. So there is a little bit more time for the departments to get in, get everything operational, move their equipment in, and then really take full occupancy.
And then the only other piece of that is we do have 3 other pieces of scope that'll need to be bid out. Some of them have been bid out. I don't believe the contracts are executed, so municipal fiber extension was included in that authorization by the town. A radio master tower for the fire substation was included. That has been purchased. The construction or erection of it hasn't been purchased yet. And then the last piece of that is, one second, the radio equipment relocation from Lothrop Street out of that into where that tower is. So those will all be accounted for within that bid savings at a later date. They didn't need to be bid with the project at this time. We do also have now some opportunity at the authorization. KBA was able to provide a couple of alternates on there,
Additional services.
yeah, additional services, sorry. If we had the opportunity, we don't need to vote on that tonight, I just want to make everyone aware. For FF&E and IT, design, fit out, design and procurement services through construction. So very similar to what we did with Perkins Eastman at Blanche Ames. They could provide those services with a consultant that they work with for these type of buildings. So we were able to make sure that those are offered to the town. We'll make a recommendation at a later date to include those. You don't want to do those too early because technology and furniture all change at the drop of a hat. So I think if there's anything else, Chad or Greg, that I might have missed as we're gearing up for potential another project.
No, I would say that we're excited to get started. Obviously, the bids were incredibly close.
Which is very representative.
It's a good sign
Yeah.
that the documents were clear and tight, that people were estimating and bidding on the same scope of work. And both contractors that ultimately bid are excellent. So it's a good sign moving forward.
Great. Jamie, you're on that committee as our representative. What do you?
Yeah, and with the chair here, Andy, would you mind coming up? We'll just bring a chair up and just have you say a few words as the chair. Slide this.
Yeah. Slide over.
Andy, give me 1 second. So the reason I'd like Andy to speak is Obviously, he's kind of day in, day out working with this team. And he's also, I would say probably the most familiar of any of us on that, on the municipal building committee, and brings a unique engineer perspective to this project. And so he's seen the good work that's been done thus far and can speak both as the chair and as a citizen of the town of Easton and as an engineer.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. We, as well, the NBC, were very pleased with the numbers. As you saw, we're about 10 million under what both estimates, and I believe we had an OPM estimate and a design estimate, and so those numbers were very close as well. And obviously, the bids came back very well, and it really made our job easy because we were going to have to make some tough decisions about the alternates, and I think it's important to try to put those in. And that's why we recommended we put those in. I think it's about 1.6 million, both of those. Only because, and we've talked about this a little earlier, is if you can get it in up front, it's going to be a lot less cost, especially structurally, knowing the DPW building, you build a canopy on it. If you have to do that at a later time, it's really going to be a lot more money. So it was great that, that the department heads were willing to give that, but I think it makes sense to go forward with those. So we recommended those as well. So I think it's hard to believe how many years it's been. We always talk about the Doran Whittier report in 2014, and I always say that I did read the whole thing. It was 900 pages. So, and it's just interesting as someone who's kind of new to the town thing that here we are almost 10 years later, and that roadmap has actually worked very well.
I don't think you get to say new if you've been reading the Doran Whittier report for a decade.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
I'm an engineer.
Yeah, pretty gritty and seasoned at that point.
But it was good. And then in Director Field, Dave had done an update in 2019, which really helped launch these last two projects. So
that's right.
And in general, I think we're in great hands. I mean, obviously, PMA did great with the school and have helped us along the way. And KBA, they've done a lot of public safety projects and they've done great in Weston and Sampson. So, we're excited to start the construction phase.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. He spoke for me, so thank you.
All right, I'll go.
Jen?
It just gives me great confidence to be moving forward with this team again, guiding us through this process and working through it with us. And so thank you. Forward to it.
Yeah, similar. There's definitely a comfort level of trust. I'm glad we're working with you guys. I'm thrilled to hear that you've worked with Fontaine before and you have a positive relationship with them. I think that means a lot, coupled with it being less than 1% difference between the number two bidder. Quick question. You listed off a few things that aren't included in this, and one you mentioned the fiber loop.
Municipal fiber extension to connect the buildings to the town fiber.
Didn't we award that to Phoenix like a month ago?
Yep.
We did?
Yep.
Oh, so that's already done? It's just separate?
I don't know if the works, Dave was
The
handling
work,
it.
yeah, I don't think the work's
I don't
done,
think the work's
but
done.
the contract is awarded.
I believe so.
Okay.
Just to clarify, that could have also been a fiber run to some of the new water plants?
No, it was definitely
it was
for
for
the
these
new
ones?
building.
Okay,
I
then
believe
yes.
it was.
Yeah, fair
Yep.
enough. And then if you might recall, Chief Alexander came in and, as Chief Alexander does, went out and bought a tower. So you've done that
Storing it
as well.
somewhere.
I don't,
God knows.
We don't ask.
It's somewhere. It's somewhere. We know.
Craig?
I'm very excited. I think every time I see you guys, I tell you the same thing. And in my conversations with members of our police, fire, DPW, they're like beyond excited about having a place to work and live. That is something that we're all very pleased that we're able to do. And thanks to the community for supporting it. I'm just very, very grateful for all the work that you guys have done.
I think it's important to reflect on the pathway to get here. And when you say that, you read the 2014 Doran Whittier, many of us, were involved in it either on the board or on the sidelines at the time. And sometimes I think it looks like, oh, this new school popped up. Like, people really don't understand, or, nobody told me we were building a new school. Like, for years, the work that goes on from the vision to when is the appropriate time to how to be able to make the most of financing opportunities or get in an MSBA program or something like that. It's really stressful, and it's really stressful on the board to take the votes to be able to move big projects forward, because we know that they're a lot. So when you get to this point and you can finally, like, you can see it coming, you can have that little sigh of relief, it is very exciting. But I think I just want people at home to know this is a super long process with a lot of smart people looking at every single, piece of material that goes into it. It's a lot of work, and I really want to thank you for hanging in there all these years to be the chair of that committee, because you are the glue that keeps all these people connected and moving forward. So, and we have a lot of confidence in you.
Yeah, I would like to say thanks to Andy as well. I think, my job is to talk until everyone falls asleep. So you'd be forgiven thinking that, sometimes these projects are just being driven by staff, and they're not. A lot of these boards are made up majority by residents who are being paid $0 to commit hundreds of hours of their talent. And the NBC has been great, and that's a really talented group that has engineers on it, has architects on it, has members from the school committee, the superintendent, director of public works, construction professionals, and these are folks who are members of our community who give an enormous amount of their time to do technical level reviews of these things and to serve as, and it's not over now. The NBC, we're going to have to adopt a similar cadence process like we did with the school planning committee, where we'll need a technical review team assigned for as we go and have change orders in the field. The NBC will be meeting, I believe, probably monthly for the next 2 years. So they've put in an incredible amount of work as our residents on these boards, and I'm super appreciative. I know the police and fire chief are, the director is, all of their staff are. Many of the leadership of these departments joined that meeting to just kind of watch along, because it's hard to believe we're getting here. And again, to Craig's point, thanking for residents, because this was a hard decision for the community. This is an expensive project. We're thrilled it's under budget, but it's still over $100 million project, right? And so really appreciate voters, both with this and with Blanche Ames, giving us the approval and the trust and the responsibility to do this and do this the right way. So really appreciate everyone involved. And thanks, Andy.
And I hope in 10 years, the people that are running things at that time look back and say, wow, they made a really good decision to do that year, because this is what it would cost now. And we've already seen those number variances on Blanche Ames. If we waited 1 year, 2 years, like really short amounts of times, millions of dollars, in costs for things. So, well, let's just get back to the headline on this. Connor, how much money are we saving on this so far?
$9.4 million.
So
under
that's a
the
great
construction
first
budget.
step moving forward. All right, so
If I could give the board just a recommended motion, as I had mentioned, there's some insurance things we're making sure to button up. If the board's willing, a motion to approve the award of a contract to Fontaine Brothers pending final approval by town legal counsel.
Sounds like a good motion to me.
Great.
I'll second that.
Connor can't.
I can't move
I
it.
gotta move it.
You want to make it as
Listen to an awful
So
lot of
moved.
them, but I can't do one.
I'll second that.
All right, so that's Lamb and Bodger, all in favor? Unanimous. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Andy. All right, next, item 7, a discussion and vote for PCD 2023-06, change order number 1 for BSC Group, the Sam Wright Field Project Development, including permitting and bid review assistance.
Sure, thank you, Dottie. Attached in your packet, you'll see a memo from Land Use and Environmental Planner Jen Carlino for a change order getting prepared for permitting and bid review on some wetland restoration that's been funded through state grants. And this change order of $52,823 will be funded entirely out of grants, not local funds, from an existing $150,000 grant from the Nature Conservancy to the town. If a board awards this and that proceeds, when it goes to bid, the Conservation Commission, with the assistance of BSC Group, who is the designer involved, will look at hiring a contractor using the remainder of that grant to do the construction phase work. So I recommend approval.
I think it's great, and I thank Jen Carlino for doing such a great job with these grants. She's gotten quite a few of them, moving some of these projects forward, and every bit of that helps. But I also want to recognize that getting the grants is not always the hard part. It's hard to get
administering
grants,
them
but
is-
it's also harder to administer the grants on top of it. So, any comments, questions from anyone? Nope.
I just want to thank Representative Carol Doherty for the initial earmark during 2022 for the Economic Development Bill earmark for that project.
Great reminder. Thanks, Greg.
So where's my thing here? Okay. I move to approve PCD 2023-06, change order number 1, BSC Group, Sam Wright Field Project Development, including permitting and bid review assistance.
Second.
That's Bodger and Lamb. All in favor? Unanimous. All right, next we have acceptance of resignation, Adam Riverio, Commission on Disabilities, with a term expiring June 30th, 2025. We did receive an email from Adam with his resignation. I will say that I've worked with him on the commission for several years now, and he has really been a great contributor, brings a lot of different perspective, lived perspective, having done work with people with disabilities. And we're going to miss him on that committee, but I want to thank him for his years of excellent service. So with that, I would take a motion to accept his resignation, and it will be a motion, a second, and then a roll call vote.
I move to accept the resignation with regret for Adam Riverio from the Commission on Disabilities, with a term expiring on June 30th, 2025.
Second.
That's Bodger and Lamb, and a roll call vote, starting with you, Jamie.
Stebbins Riverio.
Stacy Bavaria.
Lamb Riverio.
Full Janetti Riverio.
Barger Riverio.
All right, great. Next on item 9, the Town Administrator update on promoting a sustainable Easton, the PACE open house of February 26th.
Sure, thank you, Dottie. The board, I think, is following along with promoting a sustainable Easton's work pretty closely. But for anyone who happens to be watching this at home, promoting a sustainable Easton, which goes by PACE, was established following an overwhelming vote from our citizens coming out of a tough budget last year, going into fiscal 25, that's the current year, at our May town meeting. 4 out of 8 of the years where I've presented an operating budget to this community, voters have at town meeting amended it, which is their right, from the floor. And in all 4 cases, although the specifics and details varied, it was in one direction, which was to increase the resources, financial resources available to our departments, often public safety and education. Usually that was coming out of reserves, which is not a sustainable practice. And when this happened again in May, we proposed an amendment. Dottie proposed an amendment that voters adopted after further amending it, to create a committee that includes residents in Easton, leadership from the town, the schools, the finance committee, representatives from the Easton Educators Association, which is our largest labor group in town, and spend the next year, but leading into the May town meeting, which will be here sooner than it feels, to look at the town and schools operating position, look at our finances, understand why have we had this budget gap, rather than necessarily just kind of take my word for it, because obviously my opinions on this are written voluminously and easy to find, and make recommendations back to the elected leadership of this community and ultimately the voters on what is the best path forward for a sustainable future for Easton. That committee, which is 19 members, who've been meeting twice a month, basically, since the end of August, for what are typically 4 to 5 hour long meetings that get pretty intensive. They go into every single dollar of revenue and expenditure of a town and the schools, and have had some relatively, I think, important and constructive but tough conversations. They have until the end of March to make their report back to the select board and the school committee on what they plan to recommend to our voters at town meeting in May. they came to the board in December to give their kind of first milestone deliverable, which was a report on our existing position. That looked at existing data, it looked at comparable data, third-party information that's not just, me saying, hey, we're doing great, go tell the board how great we are, but looking at the State Department of Revenue, who aggregates all spending information from 351 cities and towns, looking at how we spend compared to our neighbors, looking at how we spend compared to our peers, and reaching the same conclusion that benchmarking and audits have shown for many, many, many years, which is that on a per capita basis, for the size of a community we have, we spend dramatically fewer dollars on every one of these municipal and educational functions. That has been true for years. It is a disparity that is growing over time. And that is also true with our per pupil spending when you look at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's comparable districts. When they look at your test scores and they look at the outcomes for your students, they show that Easton Public Schools spend substantially less per pupil than most of their peer districts. They spend less per pupil than most of our neighbors. So much so that if you normalized that out, you would be talking about a multi-million-dollar add to their budgets just to put them where other comparable districts, or in many cases districts that don't have the outcomes Easton does, are. So that report was given to the board in December. PACE then held an open house in January at the Queesit House. I think it was like maybe 3 degrees that night. And to the credit of our residents, a lot of them came. And we didn't really know how that would go because, like tonight, if our building projects were coming in 17% over budget, I have a feeling these seats would all be full, right? But they're not if it's going well. And that's okay to an extent, but we want people to be engaged. And so budget meetings, when it's prospective and months out, it's hard to get people to take time out of their schedule. But something 70-ish or more people came on a freezing night. There certainly wasn't 70 parking spots at the Queesit House, so we give them credit for walking through that. And it was a really, really productive open house, certainly a diversity of opinions from our residents, but people engaged in really important, really good conversations with their neighbors, with elected leaders, with department heads, and with their neighbors who are on PACE. And so after that open house through the month of January and now heading into this month, PACE has been working on taking their existing work, feedback from the first open house, and their charge, which was adopted by the Select Board of the School Committee last summer, of coming up with these recommendations, and they're getting to work on that. And while they haven't finished that, March is coming very soon. So they've done 2 things. One is they started to lay out what they view as the size of the budget gap, right? So there's a very literal way you could look at that and read my budget memo, which says we have a deficit of $6.36 million. For anyone watching, there's sometimes I think folks think some of that's smoke and mirrors because we always have a deficit when we start the budget, and then you get to town meeting and the deficit's gone. That's a result of, first of all, usually the preliminary deficits are 1/3 that size. And second of all, as year-to-date actuals come in on your revenues, you could accept a slightly higher risk tolerance on your forecast. You reduce for requests from your departments, from a town and school, and in the case of the current fiscal year, lean on some reserves, and you make it work for 12 months. But the scale of the current deficit is unlike any we've had, and as PACE has corroborated, and as we know as budget officials, there's 2 ways that a deficit of that size against a $100+ million budget is solved. The first way, which is what myself and the superintendent have to do as a matter of law, we need to put a balanced budget forward that meets our anticipated revenue, is that we need to close a lot of that gap through substantial cuts to the town and school budgets. Not because we think that's the right thing for our staff or our citizens who rely on those services, but because we have to balance the budget. The second, and we will continue moving in that direction. At your next meeting in 2 weeks, I'll have a change memo that starts to quantify in more detail some of the substantial cuts we will have to make to town services that will be universal in scope. It is not a matter of cutting one position or closing a department half the time to the public, which we've already done, and that began today, we will be closing the town pool for the summer. It will not open. We will not be staffing those seasonal staff. We will be reducing positions in public works. The chiefs and I, with public safety being the last thing that you would cut, are already reviewing what those options are, and we'll have to lay those choices out and detail them for the board and the public shortly. That's what we have to do between now and May, and we will put a balanced budget forward that I expect will be universally not something people want, but I hope anyone listening to this can appreciate that we're not the federal government. We can't just deficit spend when our revenues aren't going to meet our expenses. We also aren't in this position because we made reckless choices on our revenue and cut our income, or because we exploded our operating budgets with wild public sector raises, and hiring bonanzas. Our operating budgets up until 25, since COVID, grew around 2.75 to 3%. The past 18 months, from fiscal 24 going into 26, our healthcare has gone up 20%, which is $2 million. Our pension assessment's gone up roughly the same, which is another $1 million. Our property casualty liability insurance, just like everyone's seeing with their home insurance, their auto insurance, we don't have a home to insure. We have 1 million square feet of buildings, and we have many vehicles to insure. That's gone up 17%. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars. Those 3 items plus regional school assessments have increased by about $3.6 million in 2 years, which is more than half of our deficit. This is happening against a backdrop where we've been receiving the minimum increases by law from the state for 15 plus years, basically since the last override in 2006. And so we're just up against it, and it's not because, not for, again, cutting revenue or in some way or, giving everyone 10% COLAs every year. That's not how we got here. But the fact is we are here, and so one of the ways forward that we have to prepare is a budget that addresses that deficit primarily through cuts. It will also be doing it through fee increases. There are boards I'm meeting this week looking at that. We will have a new fee schedule for you to consider as well. Building departments looking at their fees. And we're going to stay on that path, and we will have to, by law, have that version of a budget at the town meeting in May. It was a very long way of saying what one of the choices was, but that's what the path we're on, so I wanted to be super clear about that. The second choice with a deficit of that size is for the community to decide if they want to pass an operating override. Now, there is probably no one in Easton less excited about that prospect than me, given that and 2 debt exclusions in 5 years is a tremendous amount to ask the public. And people have every right to hear that be said and say, what are these people thinking, right? But we don't get to pick when market forces hit. We don't get to pick when inflation is the highest it's been in 40 years. We don't get to control when healthcare goes up 20% in 2 years. And certainly folks here now and voters as well, can appreciate that when we have facilities that are 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, that those reach a point to where something must be done. But it can't be done without the community voting on it. None of these are things that we just unilaterally get to decide. And then none of these are easy decisions. We have adopted a variety of tax relief programs that have been very successful. We funded them pretty aggressively with federal grants, which has been great. The new chief assessor is working with the board of assessors to ensure that the program voters adopted when the building project in 23 was approved for a local circuit breaker program to coincide with the state circuit breaker tax credit is ready to go for fiscal 26, which is great. But that doesn't change that. No matter how many of those programs we do, it's never going to be enough. We always need to keep working harder and doing more. And there's never a time where considering something like this isn't a real hardship to lots and lots of people. However, wish that it weren't where we are as much as I could. These are the tools available for things of this scale to local governments. And that's why the rate of communities seeking overrides in Massachusetts has doubled in the past 18 months, because this is also not something that's happening just to Easton or because of Easton. Many other communities are in the GIC and are seeing these healthcare increases. Other communities who are not are seeing ones as high as 15% in 1 year. In the past 5 years or so, there's been some coverage in the regional and Boston area papers that Easton schools, long being minimum aid, used to be the outlier among public schools, and now 2/3 of school districts in the state receive minimum aid, which can mean as little as a 1 or sub 1% increase in state funding to your school district. And it's not a coincidence that as 2/3 of schools' number one revenue source slides into 1% or sub 1% increases and healthcare starts going up 10% a year, that the rate of overrides in Massachusetts has doubled, and that it feels like the wheels are coming off the bus because those structural forces are making that happen. So PACE isn't at a point of finalizing a recommendation, but they have each, to varying degrees, identified cuts and dollar amounts of cuts, and the fact that preserving service in any approximation of what we have now would require an override. Even if PACE published a report today saying that's what they think, none of these things happen in a vacuum. These would be choices of our voters. And we have a lot of work to do at PACE. The select board will have a lot to do, the school committee, all of us in the coming months as we try to reach some sort of consensus of options to give to the community. And I think that's really important to emphasize, that these are choices for the community. And as I said in the budget 2 weeks ago, they're not accounting decisions. These are value choices, and they're very hard choices. And so I hope, I'm not using notes right now, so I hope that I'm coming across sincerely of how much I appreciate that this is, frankly, the last thing anyone wants to hear when the cost of living has gone up 20%. And for whatever cold comfort that's worth, I think we all recognize that. On the flip side, I think it would be irresponsible of all of us to not identify that this is a need and these are the choices and give that choice to our community simply because it's hard. So PACE will have their second open house, which I probably buried the lead on Wednesday, the 26th, from 6 to 8 p.m. at Blanche Ames. We want to make sure everyone is aware of this. We know not everyone is on the town crier or is using the internet to get information. We don't have a local paper anymore, which is really tough. And so every house in Easton will be getting this postcard. If not this week, then very soon, inviting them. It has information about everything I've just said. All of this is public information that we make available to people. We don't expect someone to just take my word for it. They could go to www.easton.ma.us/PACE, P-A-S-E, and access all those reports. They could look at data banks from the state. They could compare us in any way they would like. And at this open house, PACE will give a presentation on the draft of their recommendations based on the feedback they've heard. And people will have time to, question PACE, to question us, to give their feedback. The exact format's going to get worked out by PACE 48 hours from now at our meeting on the 12th. But the first one was very successful. We hope to see a really good turnout at this one. And we'll continue to create opportunities for people to engage along the road to the town meeting on May 19th, where voters are going to, as they always do, PACE, I think, has been really good at pointing this out. There's other non-market-based forces at play here too, right? Policy level choices in Easton, things like having a tremendous amount of preserved open space. That's very beautiful, but those are decisions that voters make over generations. These are not things that just come out of town hall, right? And at the end of the day, we're going to be with our community on May 19th, where these budget choices will be in front of them to decide. And what we want, unlike some of these other town meetings, and this isn't a criticism of our voters, if anything, it's an acknowledgement on my part that we need to be doing it differently, and we're trying with PACE. We want folks to be engaging now and understanding now and sharing their thoughts with us now, not tuning in on the 18th or 19th. So as I said with NBC, I really appreciate residents who are on PACE. Some of them have never been on a local board before, and so that's, I am not clever enough with my analogies right now to make a good one, but it's pretty aggressive to go from not being on a board to being on this one and doing these marathon meetings and really getting into all of this nitty gritty. But everyone,
And also, everybody's showing up.
they are showing up. The attendance
Like,
rate is
the
like
attendance
near
rate's-
100. It's
yeah.
it's remarkable, and they deserve a ton of credit. And they're putting their names on this work too, and surely probably going to face the challenging and criticism that any of us will, and that takes a lot of moral courage for those citizens to volunteer to jump into the fray on what is a really hard process of picking from a menu of nearly universally painful choices. There's no easy way out. And I hope, again, that it's sincere coming from me that we recognize that, and we do not take lightly the work we have in front of us and the difficulty of the choices that our residents have in front of them.
Well, I think one of the things that's important also is there's a frequently asked questions page on the PACE, and
Yes.
PACE also has a Facebook page that gives some hot off the presses information, like talking about events and so forth. But there isn't one question that I've heard from anybody that the committee hasn't not just answered already, but has really done the research, the comparisons, the vetting. You know, the committee is aware of some of the general hot topic questions. There's too much administration. We have documents from DESE showing the balance of administrators to teachers to staff, and we're lowest on every single thing we've looked at and compared. So I think that, people should be upfront with their questions.
Yeah.
We've gotten a couple of emails from people in the community, which I'm shocked that we're not getting 50 of them a day. We should have tons of people asking us questions, and I really applaud the people that have sent in emails to ask us. To come in at this point in the game and be like, I'm not going to go back and watch every meeting from PACE since Labor Day, or where do we even find the information of what I'm looking for? If somebody feels like that and they have questions, just reach out, send us an email. If you can't make it to the PACE open house, we'll find a way to connect. But we really hope that people will see that this 19-member committee has really done the real heavy lifting on this to get to where we are. And I hope people will continue to ask questions of us.
I do have a quick question. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump out of order.
No, go ahead.
End of April, you said the recommendation is coming?
End of March.
End of March,
Yes.
okay.
I mean, that's when the charge says. I can't speak for the committee. I think knowing them, they're gonna.
If it could come sooner. No, I know they're working.
Yeah,
you guys are crushing it.
Yeah.
Extremely diligent, 5-hour meetings. But if a decision does happen to come sooner, we need to know right away. I anticipate it will be an override. I'm going to go on record saying that because I want people to start talking about it. I don't want them 3 weeks from now or a month from now to say, select board, just announced an override. I'm here saying I think it's coming. We didn't vote on it tonight, but I think it's coming.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's a fair representation of
absolutely.
what PACE has said
If
publicly.
you've watched any meeting,
Yeah, and it's also on this.
you can see that. But I want people talking about that.
Yeah.
Because if in May we're asking the voters to make a decision, you make a great point. The people of the community need to decide what type of community they're going to live in. And I want to give them as much notice of their options as possible.
Right.
So I'm saying tonight, I believe an override is coming. Please show up to this meeting.
I appreciate that, and I think something else that's important too is PACE. Again, it's not final, but they've been having really good conversations and kind of breaking them into two buckets, which I would hope the public will appreciate. And we've gone through some tough projects that people have asked really good questions. People have gotten involved, and one of the things that's really important is that we didn't kind of go through this 9-month process, say, hey guys, we investigated it and we figured it out, just raise taxes, problem solved. Right, that would be somewhat disingenuous of us, I think.
And none of us would go to those long meetings if
Correct,
we knew that
yeah.
was the end result.
There's
I
other
wouldn't.
things on Wednesday nights that we could certainly do. Part of it is also not in a punitive way, but taking a self-critical lens of what are things we can be doing differently on a move forward basis in the future right? Whether that's through a compact with the community, policy commitments, because even if there is an override, if healthcare keeps going up 10% a year, we're going to be in trouble in year 2 or 3, right? And so that's not going to be enough. I don't say that to be hopeless and say, so don't bother, but there's other things that we need to do. And some of the feedback that we've gotten from folks focuses on policies around growth and development, right? Because that's a really important part of this, right? This board knows that we've worked hard with approvals through town meeting on zoning, construction projects, to encourage new growth. That's new construction or improved construction, infill, taking advantage of things like sewer. You saw some of that tonight. That over time adds up meaningfully to our ability to increase how much taxes we collect without having an operating override. And that's paid dividends. And frankly, had we not done those things, we wouldn't have made it this far. And we know that the current year we're in has had the best new growth that we've ever had. And that's great. But it's not enough to totally offset generations of policy choices that were not necessarily pro-growth. And that's not a criticism. That was by design, right? So this committee is also being very thoughtful about there's an immediate challenge we have coming in July this year that voters are going to be weighing in on at the May town meeting. But there's longer term things we need to consider as well, because it's not, their charge is to look at sustainability, and they're looking at a 5-year outlook, because to say, hey, this will solve it for 12 months is not good enough for our residents, and it shouldn't be. And so they're going to have other recommendations of things that are also not easy that we need to grapple with when it pertains to land use policies, wetland policies, OPEB and long-term financial liabilities for retiree health care, budget controls on a move forward. These are things that we owe the public through PACE and then your boards to take very seriously, because this isn't something that you could say credibly that there's 20 plus years of structural and policy-based factors influencing where we are today, and that there's one mechanism that fixes it for the next 20 years. So I expect that that's going to be, and again, I'm not speaking for the committee, but I wholly expect that their view is not going to just be what ought we do right now to get through July in the next 12 months, but what are things we need to be thinking about in the long term as a community to continue to hedge against the structural forces here, which will continue to be baying at the door, right? We wanted and have successfully to keep this at bay as long as we possibly could, right? The town, for many of these same underlying challenges, went for an override 2016 that failed. And we adopted very conservative operating positions since then. We've dramatically improved our reserve position, so much so that now sometimes the question is, why do we need to talk about that? Just use your reserves. But you can't lean on your one-time reserves to solve a recurring problem. But yes, to your point, that is 100% being discussed by PACE. And as a town administrator, I would be disingenuous to suggest to the public that with a problem of this size, that's if you wish to avoid the cuts, that's your option. That is the option. There's no amount of raising permit fees or notary fees or tickets that gets you anywhere in the same order of magnitude. And it's also not something that we haven't highlighted for a long time, for years and years. And we have worked hard to push that away and do the best we can with the revenue that's coming in, because we also recognize that due to the makeup of our real estate here, with so much of it being open space or non-taxable, and the remainder being primarily residential, that there is a substantial tax burden. Both things can be true. You can have a high tax bill compared to many of your neighboring communities and still have your local government spending far less on a normalized basis in them, because a lot less of our land is paying taxes. So it's certainly a challenging set of circumstances, and I didn't mean to go on endlessly, but I think, Mark, your point is well made. It's called out right here on this card for folks, and that is absolutely one of the choices that PACE is considering. But again, that ultimately pace, even the select board, we can't unilaterally decide that, nor should we. That'll be a choice for our community.
Well, I think if people watched one meeting, watch our
Yes.
last PACE meeting, because everyone on the committee was tasked with, how big do you think the problem is? And how do you plan to solve it? So generally, if I'm correct, I think we arrived at somewhere around $8 million of a challenge, and then some people said 100% override, no cuts. Some people said 80%, override, 20% cuts. There were a whole bunch of different combinations of what people are thinking about, but every one of them included an override. There was nobody that said just make 100% of this all cuts across the board. So I think that you're totally accurate in bringing that up like that.
Yeah. I want, it's almost like I want to hit people over the head with a hammer, like, pay attention. This is happening. I don't want to get the emails like, I didn't know this.
We will.
We will, and that's fine. But
And
I want to be. We're already getting them. But also, Connor, to your point, you mentioned something. Even if you're 100% override, no cuts to staff, structural changes still need to occur.
That's right.
And it's not like, oh, we're going to throw some money at this problem and then in 3, 4, 5 years come back to the well and ask for more. We haven't had an operational override since 2006. It's almost 20 years. You can't have. We're not going to. I don't think we'll ever be a community that can do operational overrides every 3 years. I just don't see that as this community. So we need, if that is the recommendation of PACE, it has to be something that's reasonable, will get us through the storm, and while getting through the storm, they also provide to us recommendations about changes that we need to make structurally for growth, for staff, for just structural things that your department heads have to look at. Regionalization, I'm not exactly sure what they'll come back with, but we need to change how we do things here. And that's not to say that how we've been doing things has been wrong. It's not at all. When you have double-digit increases across the board that everybody's facing, and nobody could have predicted this is what happens. But I want to be upfront. It's February. May is coming up. Pay attention, please, with all due respect.
Well, our homework from last year was to take a Tom Broussard spreadsheet, based off of what Wendy's numbers are, and go in and say, if we change this, it affects year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that way. If we cut out of here, all the numbers roll so that we're supposed to go through and say, what do we think the number should be? And if we do that, what does that look like over 5 years? So, we are hearing that. We want to certainly get through more than 5 years, but we're definitely looking at a 5-year window, not a 1 or a 2-year window.
And in the process of that 5-year window comes all those structural things we need to look at.
Yep.
We'll figure it out one way or another.
I just want to say that I think this PACE committee, and I did spend some time watching some previous meetings, but has done a really thoughtful job of not leading anyone down any path. It's been exhaustive, as you mentioned, the hours. I mean, these are marathon meetings, and it's work I couldn't do right now. I don't have the bandwidth. So to see 19 people, and you mentioned almost 100% attendance at each one of these meetings, is phenomenal. And asking the community, going back to really December, to please ask the hard questions. Please come to us. This is the work we're doing. We want you to ask us why in the world we would ever consider an override, or why, and that's what Mark's asking right now. He's saying, please come out and be engaged and ask the toughest questions you can and I'm super proud of that first open house on January 8th, I think it was, when we had the attendance we had, and the fact that every department head was there. Everyone could learn about anything they wanted to. And then the feedback I got, which I think is the most tremendous feedback we could have gotten, was we needed more time in a larger venue. Unbelievable. So now, February 26th, 6 p.m., Blanche Ames School, we've got that opportunity, a larger venue, and I'm sure many folks willing to stick around and answer questions well beyond I'm going to say the 8 o'clock hour because that's a small 2-hour window. But Mark, you couldn't have said it better, is that now is the time. Please come out, please ask. And they can grab anyone. If Dottie, you had a good point too, is that you don't need to necessarily go to anyone on that committee. There's a lot of us that know, can speak to, what a structural deficit is and the task that is at hand. And we'd be happy if we can't answer it to get you to do the warm handoff and provide you with the person that can. So now is absolutely the time. Please engage us.
Yeah. Awesome. Jen?
There's nothing I can add that hasn't really eloquently been said by Connor, you, Mark, or Jamie, regarding the situation we're in, what needs to be done, and the tough decisions that have to be made. But I do want to thank each and every member of PACE who have spent a lot of time, hours every other week, I believe. I'm hearing 4 to 5 hours per meeting. It's an incredible amount of time and effort put in to really going through this in a deep, thoughtful way. And the fact that it's 19 members from a variety of perspectives, and they're all coming to different flavors of similar conclusions is really telling. So I don't think anybody should think this has been taken lightly. And I'll just reiterate that rather than speculating on anything, ask the questions, send the emails, come to the events, and the answers are there, and we can tackle them together. So.
Excellent. Craig?
I think one of the things that's critical for me to say is that the members of this committee, the majority of the members of this committee, PACE committee, are citizens of the town. They're not public servants. They're just Jane and Joe Jones from the community, and so that as we understand the implications of this, so it's not that we're ignoring anything. We want to know exactly what's going on. We want people to understand completely. Personally, every opportunity I have, when I see people in the community, I tell them, you need to follow PACE. You need to look at this. You need to ask the questions. You need to ask the questions of me, of Mark, of everybody. I couldn't have said it any better, Mark, than you did. That this is critical. And as Dottie said, you need to look 5 years out, not just 1 year. You've got to take the time to say what's going to happen as we go forward. Because as all of us know, when we look at our bills for our insurance, our homeowners, our auto insurance, our health insurance, everything's going up. And that's what's happened to the town. And we're also very cognizant, as you, Mark, and Tom Broussard indicated years ago with the Taxation Aid Committee, we understand there are people who are going to struggle, and we need to do something to help those people as well. That's what I've got to say right at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's, it's not an us versus them kind of a thing. We're all neighbors. We're all subject to the same either cuts in service or increased taxes. We're all a part of that also. So, sometimes when I see things, it's like, do people realize that we're all volunteers also, that this isn't, we don't get paid any big salary to do this. We're really in it because we care a lot about it. We all you guys all have kids in the school system. Craig and I had kids in the school system. And I want to give a shout out to the school committee because I feel like so many people are just focused on, the school part of this. The town part of it is pretty significant as well. But, the school committee, we have a couple of members that are like us, that they had kids in the system before. They're still putting their passion behind it to serve on that committee. We have some that have younger kids that are in there also. But they are working diligently too, and I feel like they're under a big microscope. None of us would be doing this if we didn't care about the community, and especially our kids. We all want our kids to have the best education, the best experience in the schools. And so I hope people think about that when they come forward, to talk with us. I feel like everybody that I've spoken with has been super respectful and really engaging. And even that night at the open house, people were great. There were some people that came in that were very frustrated, and they shared it. We were able to talk through it. Sometimes we agreed to disagree at the end, and sometimes, there was a little bit of a midway, point where we were connecting, but everybody was very thoughtful in their approach, and I really just want to make sure that people know that means a lot to us, and we notice it.
One other thing is that this postcard was a terrific idea, to make sure that people got it at home, that they had a chance to read it, they understand what's in it, and they understand what opportunities they have on February 26th to come and have those conversations. And it says mailing was funded by donations.
I'm so glad you just said that, because
I-
that's going to be the first question people get. Who paid? How'd they pay for this?
Donations.
It's donations.
So that's
you.
been one of the benefits, selfishly for me, being on PACE, because I'm in my 14th year here. And so I've been thoroughly pickled by looking at budget spreadsheets for thousands and thousands of hours and getting that, I say critical feedback in a positive way, not a negative way, but members of a committee pointing out, like, I obviously know that the tricentennial, all those nice flags, are funded through donations. Why would somebody else know that? So if somebody gets this postcard, which actually is color coordinated with all that nice tricentennial gear, because it's our colors, and says, these people are coming, they have a budget crisis and they're spending $4,000 on mailers and they put all these cute flags up. Can't be that serious, but those are not paid with the general fund. We're very sensitive to that. We're fortunate that, Stonehill, tax exempt, does gift an annual contribution to the town and schools, and so we fund things like this out of that because we're trying to balance, obviously, being frugal without not engaging our citizens. So given some feedback we've gotten on prior mailings, we wanted to make sure that it was known this was funded from that gift. And again, I'll take the opportunity to say, like, the tricentennial activities are funded through the immense generosity of our community through donations and the incredible work, again, of our volunteers on the tricentennial committee through fundraising. That's not paid out of the operating budget at the expense of schools or police and fire.
And we lucked out on some of the people that were appointed to the committee happened to be excellent graphic designers.
They're amazing. And even this was designed by a member of PACE, right? There's so much talent in Easton and so many people willing to give their time and their effort, and which we're the collective beneficiaries of. So, but yes, we did specifically note that we are not spending a lot of your tax dollars to send you a letter saying we don't have enough of your tax dollars.
Awesome. All right. The last couple of items here before we go into an executive session, we have an acceptance of the minutes for January 27th, 2025.
So moved, Bodger.
Second.
That's Bodger and Lim, all in favor. Unanimous. Town administrator notes, anything left, or we cover everything?
Spoken enough.
Sean? I'll just give a plug for Citizens Academy, especially for everything that we talked about tonight. Citizens Academy would be a great way to get a deep dive, especially in the context of the budget. So encourage everyone to sign up for it. It's going to go, registration will go until February 28th, and you can apply on the website at easton.ma.us.
Awesome, thank you. Select board notes?
I'll just say, please come out. Let's fill Blanche Eames on Wednesday, February 26th at 6 p.m. because I don't think we'll meet. Again, that's February, the week after February break. So a lot of folks are off next week with their kids, and hope they have a wonderful winter break and then come back and be ready to engage.
Great, thank you. Jen?
No additional notes tonight.
Mark?
I just want to point out and thank the Easton Chamber for a wonderful evening. They had their annual business appreciation dinner at Easton Country Club. Sean and I and Stephanie were able to go, and they honored Hilliard's, a gem of Easton, 100 years in business, still family owned, two daughters of the family are now continuing its operation into its 100th year. So that is quite a milestone, and they're still going strong.
That's great. Thank you. Greg?
I don't think I have anything else. I think I said enough already.
All right, and I don't have anything either. So with that, we're going to go into an executive session under Purpose 3 of Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with all town bargaining units. And we are not going to return to session. So we will, I'll take a motion in a second, and then we'll have a roll call vote to go into executive session.
Move to go into executive session.
Second.
That's Bodger and Lamb.
Stebbins, yes?
Stacy, yes?
Lamb, yes?
Full Janetti, yes?
Barger, yes.
Awesome, great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Joe from ECAT, for broadcasting for us. We appreciate all that ECAT does to help us get information out. And I actually noticed on ECAT that they have some information about PACE and an advertisement for the February 26th meeting, so thank you for that as well. Have a good week, everyone.